Hey, Algebra 2! We are going to be solving trig equations today, and I'm so excited to share this with you, something kind of new. So here's to just kind of give you an idea of where we're headed. If you have 4 times cosine squared of theta minus 2 equals 1, what's the angle measure that's going to make that work out? Right? We're just going to solve for this variable. And you might have some hypotheses on how we're going to do that. And I bet you're probably right, because a lot of you are such thinkers, and we can think through this problem. My cosine, my theta, took the cosine of it, squared it, multiplied it by 4, and subtracted 2. We are actually just going to backtrack. And I'm so excited for us to be able to do that with these equations that maybe have seemed kind of scary to you, but it's going to be okay. So we're going to add 2 to both sides. Probably going to start using a different color because that didn't work out so well. That leaves us with 4 cosine squared of theta, that cancels, is 3. And then the next little piece, divide it by 4 to get rid of that, so divide it by 4. And that leaves us with just cosine squared of theta is 3/4. Now we undo a square. We're good with this, square root. You're like, holy moly, you're going through this so fast. I know. We're going to practice this a whole bunch more. Square root of 3 over the square root of 4, which is really just cosine of theta is square root of 3 over 2, right? Square root of 3 over 2. Square root of 4 is just 2. And then we put it on our handy dandy little coordinate plane. So our x value is positive, and it's about 0.866, right? More than half. So it's about over here-ish. So that's my cosine value. So what's the point on the unit circle at that value? If my x value is root 3 over 2, I know that this is a 30-degree angle. And if you don't believe me that this is a 30-degree angle, we're just sketching, get out your special right triangle. If the cosine value, oh my goodness, alright, if it's that, we know it's a 30-degree angle. The kicker is, we actually have 2 solutions here. The other one, remember, is what happens if we go down. We still have this same x value, but if we go down, negative 30, because if you go back 330, why did I say that again? Or we go around the 330 degrees. So what theta makes it equal to the square root of 3 over 2? There are 2 possibilities. It could be 30 degrees, or it could be 330 degrees. If you don't believe me, test it. Cosine of 30 will be equal to that. Cosine of 330 will be equal to that. We're going to practice these a whole bunch more. Starting fairly easy, we have 2 times the cosine of theta. I'll walk you through this one, and then I'll give you a couple more to practice. So if we're solving for this cosine of theta, so we can actually figure out what that theta might be, we're just going to divide both sides by 2. So those cancel, and that leaves us with cosine of theta equals 1/2. Handy dandy little coordinate plane. I always draw the circle first, and then I put my coordinates through the middle. Sometimes I'm better at it than that, but just realized it wasn't maybe fair that I was always getting mine off of my internet, my little picture, my beautiful picture that I have. Okay, so my cosine is my x, so my x is 1/2. And then like where on the unit circle is that going to be? And we know that if our x value is 1/2, that's the little side, so this is going to be a 60-degree angle. Keeping in mind that there's actually 2 values. Keeping the same x value, we could just go back 60, which if you start at 0 and you go around, oh my gosh, what did I just do? Go around to there, that would be a 300-degree angle. Okay, time for you to try some. The only thing that I am going to say before I give you a minute to solve it. Keep in mind that you're multiplying by this negative, so you're still just going to divide by the -2 and go from there. My x value is negative, so that tells me that I'm going to go backwards. How much am I going to go backwards? A little bit more than half, so I'm going to go pretty much the whole way. And then remember, we have those two solutions. What happens if you go up to that point? Or what happens if you go down to that point? We actually have these two angle measures, one there, and then one going the whole way through to there. So again, if our bottom side is the long one, that means this one's the short one. Sometimes I'll just sketch it again off to the side. If my original drawing isn't very good, I'll just draw myself a little triangle over here and like, oh yeah, that's the long side, this is the short side, so my little angle is 30. And that kind of reminds myself of which side is which. So if we are only going almost to the 180, but not quite, we're going to go 30 shy of 180. That measure is 150 degrees. To right there, 150 degrees to that point. To get to this one down here, we're actually going to go through the 180, so it's going to be more like that 180 plus another 30 degrees, and that will be 210. So, what degree measure solves that equation? It's either 150 and or 210. So what's going to happen on the assessment, and as I'm going to say, tell me the angle measure in the third quadrant that has a solution, or that is a solution to this equation. And then on something like that, if we specify quadrant, you'll be like, oh, this one's in the second quadrant. And I said, what one's in the third? So then, if this said in the third quadrant, that would be your answer. Next page, I'm going to give you some examples to mess around with, and then you will be done. Before I give you too many more, I'm going to show you a tangent one I totally forgot. So if we have 5 times the tangent of theta equals 5, we're just going to divide both sides by 5. Keeping in mind that our tangent of theta will be equal to 5 over 5, which kind of cancels, but technically it's 1 over 1, so it's 1. Remember with tangent, that's the goofy one. We know cosine is x and sine is y, but tangent is opposite over adjacent, or sine over cosine. And if you get a proportion that's equal to 1, doesn't the top and the bottom have to be the same? What angle measure has both of them the same, crazies? A 45-degree angle. If you have square root of 2 over 2 over square root of 2 over 2, that will equal 1. So what angle measure has that? A 45-degree angle. The other word it's going to be positive is down in this lower quadrant down here. The reason why it's not back here is because you go back and you go up, so it's going to be negative. If you have a negative over a positive, the answer is negative. That's in the second quadrant over there. So the other possibility is going to be 180 plus 45, also known as 225 degrees. Okay, now I'm ready for some real ones. Alright, here you go. Try out these two, see what you can do, and please pause the video at this point, because here in a few seconds the answers will be posted that you can again pause and look through it, but go ahead and give these a shot on your own, champions. Remember, once you get a solution like sine of theta is 1/2, you don't necessarily have the answer yet. We still got to kind of think about where is that going to be on our coordinate plane, and how are we going to get our solution from there. So if sine is y and it's negative, it's going to be down here. Where sine is 1/2, where is that on the unit circle? I think it's in those two spots. I went down one whole, but that would be a half right there. So I'm going over to those points on the unit circle. So what's the angle measure there, and what's the angle measure there? There's the answer to the first one, those two solutions. So we're now thinking about kind of where would tangent be negative? If we have one, like here's positive, positive, so it's going to be positive. If you go back negative and you go up positive, you got to think about tangent is opposite over adjacent or sine over cosine. So in this quadrant it would be positive over negative, which is negative, which is what we want. Also, if you go this way, it's negative and negative, and a negative over a negative, yikes, is a positive. And in that last quadrant as well, remember we usually have two answers. If you go down, it's negative. If you go right, it's positive. Sine over cosine, opposite over adjacent. This too would be negative. So if I know my tangent is -1, I know that my value is going to be in this quadrant and this quadrant, because that's where it's negative. Keeping in mind that when the tangent's 1, that's cool, because it's an isosceles triangle, because the tangent is equal to the opposite over adjacent. So our tangent is 315 and 135 degrees. Solving equations. There you go, champions of the world.